Okay guys, this video is going to be, I guess, Tong Feeding 102. We're going to work on picky eaters and the proper methods or angles you're going to use to entice the frogs with the tongs, so that with the larger frogs, they tend to get really aggressive and attack the tongs right away once they've learned that that means food. Sometimes they will bite onto them. Sometimes they will try to swallow them. So it's going to make a difference on the angles you use, because as you can see, these tongs are regular surgical steel tongs, or they don't have any rubber tipping on them. However, you can get some that way. There is also a product out on the market that you can purchase, I believe at Lowe's or any other store like that, that you can dip your tools into and it will coat them with a rubber coating. So right now, what you see right now is a baby Ceratrophes cornuta. They are one of the prized horned frogs to have. Now, these are babies that we got in a trade from another breeder, and we've had them for a while now, but we've got 4 of them that are the smaller ones of the group, and they're little problem feeders. Sometimes they don't want to take their food. So I'm going to show you how we go about trying to tease them into it. You can see that he sees the tongs coming. He moved around, he saw it, and he wiggled to it. Ah, we have a feeder, yay! He's one of the ones that will actually take the food. We have 3 others, and I'll show you. I know that one of them for sure is a trouble feeder. He fights me every time. So let's hope that we can get him to eat tonight. And this might be him. Pardon me, I'm having trouble gripping onto the tiny piece of worm here. Come on, guy. Okay, well, it would help if I could get a hold of it. There we go. And as you can see, with a trouble feeder, they're basically just going to try to ignore you as long as possible. It takes patience and perseverance. I think I stated that in the first video. You just kind of have to tease them. And sometimes it'll take a few minutes. What we do on a regular basis, because we have so many frogs to feed on a nightly basis, I will do this for about 2 to 3 minutes. I will try. And because I don't really want to stress him out too much, I will put him aside and try to feed the others. Now you can see he's closing his eye because I'm getting too close to his little eye for comfort. But eventually what ends up happening, is that I just make him annoyed enough to finally open his mouth and say, okay, fine. Now, I was lucky that time he took it and he swallowed it. Most nights, he'll open his mouth, hold it, and then spit it right back out once I slide him over to the side. At which point in time, we go through the dance all over again. And as you can see, the containers are not super clean right now, because we usually feed them before we clean, simply because once you've handled them and moved them around after cleaning their containers, they're a little stressed. They don't feel comfortable enough to eat usually. Whereas the Cromwell, the normal regular Pacman frogs, they don't care pretty much. They'll eat after you've held them upside down. They're pretty aggressive little feeders most of the time. And you can see again that, excuse me, that we have another Little stubborn feeder. And again, I'm just going to sit here and annoy him till he does that. Now, he may be one that mouths it a little bit and tosses it out, or he may actually eat it. Yay! Again, as I stated earlier, if he would have spit it out, I would have given him a little break and then gone through the same procedure all over again. Come on. You can tell that or I can tell, rather, that they are getting used to eating and feeding from the tongs, because when we first got them, they were my stress point. These guys gave me so much trouble in feeding that I would get frustrated and start swearing at inanimate objects and what have you. But now they are learning, and they're taking their food pretty easily now. What we're going to try in the rest of the video to do is to exhibit some larger frogs and showing you the angles that we'll hold the tongs at to feed them, because they're so aggressive and tend to bite on the tongs, and we want to try to avoid that if we can, simply because we don't want them to hurt themselves. It's kind of like going to take a bite of your steak or your mashed potatoes and biting down on the fork or the spoon. Pretty creepy. Okay, so we're back with a Cronwell, Ceratropus cronwelli, regular Pacman frog. This is one of our little lime albinos, and it's a little bit larger than the smaller cornutas that were in the beginning of the video. And you see, he's already tongue trained. From the moment he emerged and absorbed his tail, he's been fed with the tongs, and so he knows when he sees the tongs coming that it means food. And so he eats very easily and readily. We give him a minute or two to get that bit of worm down, and then we will offer him another piece. Now, these little guys at this size are taking 2 to 3 small pieces of earthworm each feeding. You can see what's happening is the bit of worm is wiggling, and it's touching a part of his mouth or his lip, or he got some of the mucus or some of the excrement from the earthworm. They're earthworms. They digest the soil or earth that they're in, and the ones that we have right now are from Canada, and they are in reed sedge peat humus. Apparently the frogs are not real fond of this reed peat humus flavor. So when the worms exude it, they tend to not like that flavor. Now, on occasion, it will put them off of eating more, but not always. Let me see here. And that's what it is. I don't know if the camera can show this. Oops. Active frog. But he's got a little bit of that peat humus on his lip, and that's what's annoying him. So let's see if that put him off of eating anymore. Apparently not. These guys are really good eaters, like I said. And you'll notice, if you see the frog when they've eaten and they're getting full, we go by this little bulge here on his right side. That's his stomach, and he's going to shove those bits of earthworm into that, and it's going to bulge. Sometimes only on the one side, as you'll see them doing like little movements, scooching their back end around and wiggling their back legs to basically readjust their food in there. And we know that, like, from the look of this one, he's full. He's had his limit. So we're going to go on to the next frog. I think we'll go up a size on the next one. Okay, now on to a little bit larger frog. Pardon his moving around. He sees Jimmy off in the back there moving his fingers, and he thinks it's food. If you see, we've gotten up. That's exactly what I meant by they try to eat the tongs. Now, if you saw that piece of worm that he got fed, it was a little bit larger than what we were feeding the small ones. That's normal. This is a full-size earthworm. The bit that I'm holding by the tongs is the head. The dangly end is the butt. Your frogs will sometimes be picky about what piece they get. Some of them don't like the head, and some of them don't like the tail. It just depends on the frog. Some of them don't care at all. But as you can see, paper towel, so I can show you the difference in the sizes of worm that the larger piece of worm is what we're feeding this size frog. The smaller piece of worm is what we were feeding the baby frogs. Now, he's turned in my direction because he can see through the deli that there is a piece of worm coming his way. He's already digested the first piece, so he's ready for more. When I go to feed them, I try to angle the tongs a little so that they grab just worm and not tong. But like this guy, some of them are just aggressive enough that they will grab it anyway. And again, he saw movement elsewhere and turned to see if that was going to be a source of food. When they close their eyes, under their eyes, inside their skull, they have, some people will call them teeth. I think they're little juts of bone that assist them during eating. What they do is they're curved backwards so that when they've got the food in their mouth, they close their eyes, and that presses that bit of bone down, and as a result, that bone pushes the food backwards. And you see he turned around because he saw me move. Pardon, that's our Chihuahua who wants to go out now. As you can see, that's his third piece. He's not getting any less aggressive. This frog, from experience, this frog is going to put down, if we allow him to, 4, 5, 6 pieces of worm, easy. We just try to keep an eye on them to make sure that they're not overeating. Most of the time, they'll stop eating when they're done. They'll let us know. If a frog that's this aggressive doesn't jump at the food right away, then we know he's reaching his limit. That's why we tongue feed, because sure, you can be really cool and try to feed him with your hands and just dangle the piece of worm in front of him, but as you can see, even with the tongs, it's going to get a hold of you at one point in time or another. It's not going to feel good. Believe me, they have, you see what I mean? They have little teeth that don't feel real good, and they will puncture you, and they can give you a massive infection, and you really do not want that. And you see, sometimes they seem to think that my fingers, pudgy as they are, look like nice pieces of earthworm. Again, you see him closing his eyes to assist that food down. And on to the next. Okay, here is a larger frog. You can tell it's in the same container the others were in, or the last one was in. This is our feeding container. It is not what they're kept in. And Jimmy's going to show you the right angle. Sometimes it's best just to drop the worm because they get so aggressive at the tongs. And like I said, you don't really want your frog breaking a tooth or hurting its jaw on the tongs. As they get larger, they become more aggressive in feeding. Right now, she's not interested in that piece because she's still working the first one down. As I mentioned earlier, with the eyes closing and assisting it down. And you'll see her wiggling to rearrange the food that she's already consumed into her gut.
Need more worms.
Had to grab more worms. So, moving her around to trying to get her into a position so that she's not facing the wall necessarily, to give us a little room to be able to offer her, that's a full worm, the piece of worm. Now, when she's ready, she's ready. No mistaking it. And you can see they use those massive legs from behind to maneuver the food once it's inside. They'll walk up on it, they'll wiggle their back end to maneuver it inside them. Always, always, when you're handling these frogs, always, always approach from the back. They will ruin your day if you approach them from the front, because they will just see your fingers as really big, juicy earthworm.
Okay, one of the tricks, if you have an aggressive eater that always bites the tongs and you're trying to avoid it, take the worm, make a loop, take the tongs, frogs facing this way, tongs facing the same direction, and bring it inside. That way they can't bite anything but the worm. If they hit the tongs, they just slide off. That's the best trick to keep them from biting the tongs. Other than that, just be patient.
Like we said earlier, if you have one that's a trouble feeder, just keep at it. Just keep teasing them. Eventually you're going to annoy them enough that they're just going to open their mouth. Now, if you come across one that truly, truly will not take food, you may end up having to force feed it. They call it assist feeding or force feeding. It sometimes will take more than one person to do, because one person's going to have to hold the frog and attempt to open its mouth while the other person attempts to insert the food item into its mouth. If we get a frog that we're having a problem with, hopefully we don't, but if we do, we'll try and get that on video so that we can show you how it's done. As you can see, much bigger frog now. This is an adult female breeder. For those of you who saw the video before I changed the name, this is the formerly named pig bitch, who is now named Rhubarb. See how intently she's looking off the camera? It's me she's looking at. She wants to eat me. So right now she only has eyes for me. Jim is now going to show you how to feed.
Well, actually, I'm going to get her out of that belly.
We put her in this container, in the larger container, simply to show you the differences in size. The frogs you saw prior to this, much, much smaller in that same bowl. And And again, always approach from the back. And even then, they are fast enough to spin on you and take a nice chunk out of you anyway. So, this is feeding an aggressive adult female. Yep, she saw the food. She knows the tongs mean food. She's been raised that way her entire life, so she knows when she sees tongs exactly what it means.
Again, worm's a loop. I gotta be careful because she can jump up high enough to get me, and she doesn't care that there's a worm hanging out her mouth.
Yeah, she wants the other piece already. So,
see,
yes,
these frogs can get you with little or no effort. And of course, the worm's gonna not cooperate.
Sometimes
the worms cooperate.
do not cooperate, and they want to wiggle around on the tongs and what have you. And that, yeah. Like we stated, she doesn't care that one worm's trying to crawl out of her mouth. She doesn't care. She wants everything. Don't show her another one until she's got that down, please. On occasion, you'll see something pinkish coming out of her mouth. It's not the earthworm. It's her tongue. She will allow it to go out. The stickiness of it will grab hold of more of the worm, and then she'll suck it in, and therefore pulling in more worm. There, you see it?
I don't think they can from the angle.
No.
See that?
Oh, it's still
hanging out.
Yeah.
She can get slow sometimes. She takes her time. She'd rather grab another one before she's finished with the first one.
Now, a lot of people think they're sedentary frogs. They don't move much. They don't do much. Well, just earlier you saw her jump after that worm that was held a good foot above her.
Open up in my hand.
Yeah, they can move. Don't let them fool you. They can definitely move. They may not do it often, but some of them, especially the females we have found,
Put that one down. There you go.
they will go for it. We have some females that, no matter how nicely he tries to feed them, will go for his hand instead of the tongs every time. And you can see she has full mobility. This is a healthy frog. Her front arms both work. Both of her back legs work well. She is fully mobile and can jump. And believe me, she can bite hard. So be careful when feeding an adult frog. See the grip she gets on the tongs? Even though they're smooth, she has a firm enough grip on them that it's difficult to pull them out from their mouths. So imagine that being a finger that she gets a hold of. It, as they say on TV, it'll ruin your day.
It's one more. And she probably could eat about 5 or 6 more before she'd slow down.
You know, with our female frogs at this time of year, which is in summer, we are usually conditioning them for breeding if they're in the breeding project, and she's one of our top breeders. So keeping them very well fed and hydrated, and their temperatures and their humidity exactly where they need to be, that's our goal. We spoil them, yes we do. They're amazing creatures. They never cease to make me laugh or be fascinating. So if you have problems with your frogs feeding them, please feel free to comment, ask questions. We're always answering. I'm checking everything on a daily basis now, so yeah, please do feel free to contact us if you have any questions about them. And again, thank you guys for watching our Ivory Reptiles channel. We appreciate it, and have a good one.